Hello everyone, and welcome back to Talk to Me. I'm Lily, and I hope you all had a wonderful holiday. I know we all needed it after this year. Before I go into talking about myself, specifically the rough part of my life I mentioned last time, I wanted to talk about something positive. And that positive something is a little habit, or a better word would be a tradition that I try to do when I give gifts around this time of year. I try to hand make them. It could be like little ornaments made from embroidery or from painted pieces of wood. It's just whatever I'm able to make from what I have around the house, or little templates I can get. And it makes me really happy to see people when they open the gift smile and then see something that they can touch, that they can feel, that they can enjoy, like scarves or ornaments, and they can look at it and have something customized for them. And I was able to do that again this year, and it really made me really happy and to see the reactions. And it just really made this whole holiday a lot better. And I wanted to share that with you all, because I don't know if anybody else has that same little tradition, but if they do, I want to say, hey, you're not the only one. And if you don't, I don't know, maybe you would like to start making little gifts. I know that I really like getting little handmade gifts from my friends and family. Even if they say they're not really well done, it makes me really smile when they put that time and effort into making me something. So that's what I wanted to share. Now I'm going to start talking about that rough part I mentioned. And before I do that, I'm going to preface this with a little warning to anybody who doesn't do well with listening to stories about verbal abuse or stressful situations with parents and stuff, and if that can possibly trigger you, I would just recommend you stopping the video right here and just moving on and just listening to the first half. And if this won't trigger you, then you can listen, and hopefully maybe someone will listen to this and realize that, hey, they're actually experiencing something very similar. Because as I'll explain more later, I didn't realize what was happening for an exceptionally long time. And it was only because I realized what was going on that I was able to work on removing myself from the situation to help better myself mentally and help make a safe environment. All right, so I'm going to start talking about it now. So for all of you who are going to stop listening, I want to let you know that I am still here. I am listening to you when you want to talk. And for the rest of you who are still going to be listening, thank you. And I hope it helps to hear. So to give a bit of a overall example, or actually, let's go back. To give an overall preface to this, I grew up in a family with a mother and father, and I have one older sister. Now, I'm not going to be mentioning their names, but I will be talking about how we lived. My father had a job that he did that sadly took him away from the family for a large amount of time, so I was mainly raised by my mother. Now my sister and I grew up together, and we got along just like siblings would. Sometimes good, sometimes not so good. We had very different personalities. And I didn't notice much when I was a child, because as a child you live in your own little world in a sense, but I was definitely affected by the situation. See, I didn't know it wasn't normal for my mother to verbally abuse my father. And it progressively got worse as years went by. And she also started to verbally abuse me and my sister. Now, my sister, when she finally reached 18, she moved out of the house without telling anyone. I can understand why now, but she did that. And so the people left to experience this was my father and I. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it for the longest time, because mother would just seem to break down randomly. She'd scream and yell and throw things, and she would never physically hurt me. She would punch my dad and slap him, but she would never physically hurt me, so thankfully I did not have to experience that. But it felt very odd. I couldn't understand why I was being yelled at when I was younger. I couldn't understand why I felt like I was walking around on eggshells, or why I always felt confused. And it got worse because I was raised by her, so I took her word as pretty much as God, in a sense. And she encouraged me to not get my driver's license before I got my pilot's license, which I did end up doing, but I pushed a lot harder to get my driver's license after I realized what was going on, because what she was doing was she was limiting my freedom. And she drove me around, and then while in the car, she would berate me for being a horrible child, for being unfile, for ruining her life. It just changed the words, and it's what she told my father of he didn't make enough money for her. He always did everything wrong. If he had listened to her, he would have made all this money. He ruined her dreams of going to college, and etc. But the thing is, I believed her for a long time, and so did my father, and I didn't know what was wrong, and I was crying pretty much every day for years. And I didn't understand why at 13 I was depressed. Because to everyone else, it looked like a perfect family because she was so smiling and happy to everyone else. But once we were at home alone, she would start yelling. I'm just gonna say sorry to everyone if I have to take moments, because it's still very much a emotional subject for me, because I loved my mother so much, and it hurt a lot to be told how worthless and how much of a horrible existence I was, and how I ruined her life by being born. And yeah, it wasn't great. I would try to talk to my friends up at college when she would be around, and she would tell me to shut up and then talk about things she wanted to, putting the attention on her. And then when I did projects and stuff, and when I found faults with a little statement she'd say, she would do what is called gaslighting, where she would deny it, and she would make me think I was remembering things wrong, that my memory wasn't correct. And she did this for so long that I had quite a hard time believing my memory, believing that I was right. To where for quite a while I was double checking with everybody on things, being like, hey, did you say this? Hey, should I be doing it this way? Even though I knew. And it really hurt my self-esteem, because as a kid, I was still this bubbly, energetic person, and then I just slowly went into a shell. I withered. I got depressed, and I only talked to a few people. I had a hard time maintaining relationships with others because I felt that eventually, if I cared about them enough, they would turn out like her. It was only after that I met again my husband, before we started dating, that I started to look at things a bit differently, mainly because he asked and noticed a few things and started asking questions about what was happening and said to me that it wasn't normal. And because of that, I started looking. Because of that, I started looking and researching and being like, hey, maybe it's bipolar. Looking it up, being like, no, that's not quite it. And then I started looking up verbal abuse because I didn't really know about that until that point. I didn't know that verbal abuse was a thing because growing up, all I heard about was physical abuse for all the kids. I didn't know verbal abuse was a traumatic experience that could very much leave mental scars, not physical ones that could be easily seen and pointed out and draw attention to the situation. So, this all came to a very nasty head when she still believed that I was saying yes to everything, and I was to an extent, but that I still wasn't doubting her. And she told me to my face that she had slept with another man, a family friend, and expected me to be happy about it and not upset that she cheated on my dad while they're still married, and told her daughter and expected me to be happy. So yeah, obviously I wasn't. And then she found out that I no longer was doing everything she said. And so she cut ties with me, yelled about how I wasn't her daughter anymore, went back on her tirade of how I was an awful child, trying to gain back control by abuse. Because one thing I didn't mention, whenever she would abuse me and make me cry every day in the car on the way back from school, she would then, by the end, once she saw that it was enough, that my will to have my own identity and thoughts was pounded down enough, she would say I'm sorry and look sad and say that she really does love me, but she just can't take that kind of abuse from me. Bit ironic, isn't it? And she tried to do that again, but it didn't work because I knew what was happening, and because it happened so much that I just felt so done. But I was still very upset, very much crying. And then I got closer to my dad because now he was home more. And I talked to him about the situation. And that's when I found out that he had been severely depressed for an exceptionally long time because he was being abused verbally and physically every day when he came back from work. And he wasn't close to us kids because he wasn't there a lot in the beginning, so he didn't have that love and support, but now he does, and we're working together to get him to feel better, and now he's actually wanting to live again. And all of this really just made me see how important it was to have someone to talk to, because my dad finally had me to talk to. And I don't know if maybe he had someone else to talk to at his work, a friend, or someone that he could just talk about what was happening. Maybe he could have worked it through earlier. If I hadn't run into my old friend, my husband now, at that time, I wouldn't have been able to talk to someone about it. I wouldn't have known what was happening. It would have taken me a much longer time to figure it out, and I wouldn't be where I am today trying to pursue my dreams, being a pilot, and I very much would have just been existing, not living, and it's a very cold place to be. Because when you don't have anyone to talk to, like I did for that time, you start losing the desire to do things you like, and you know you used to like them, but you just can't get any energy to do them. Because I love learning, I love flying, I love drawing up costumes and sewing and doing so many things, but I just couldn't find any joy in life, and I couldn't share that joy with other people because I was being isolated. And that's the main part I wanted to share with you all. So that way, if somebody is out there in a manipulative, verbal, abusive, parental situation, maybe you can see that them blowing up all the time and making you feel like you're walking on eggshells, making you have panic attacks as a kid in your room because you can hear their footsteps coming down the hallway, and you're just begging for them not to open the door and come in and yell at you. I hope you know what's happening. I hope you can see what's going on now. And I hope you can reach out to someone to talk. Because that's not a good place to be. I know. And to all of you who have listened through all of this, I want to thank you for staying. And if you notice anything is wrong with anybody you're around, just reach out and ask them what's going on. And if they don't feel comfortable talking to someone in person, I don't know, maybe tell them to reach out and talk and just write to me. I really do hope that through here I can help people not feel alone, because it's awful. But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and end it here. And I just want to say I'm Lily. And to all of you who are listening, I am here and I am listening. So talk to me.